Hey, this is Mr. Spencer, and today we're talking about some timed writing strategies for your AP poetry question. Okay, free response question one is the poetry. Now, there are three different types of essays you're going to be writing. The second on the AP exam is the passage from a novel or a play. And the third is the open ended essay, where they give you a topic, but you choose what book you want to write about: Gatsby, Hamlet, your independent reading novel, something else mature. You have 40 minutes in our timed writing in class, but remember 2 hours on the AP exam to fit in three essays. So the average is about 40 minutes per essay. Here's what a prompt looks like. Here's the plants poem we did way back in August. It was used from the 2018 test. It did not have these pictures of vines and plants on it, though. I added that just to keep your interest. Are you with me? Are you asleep? Your practice timed writing essays will be graded on the AP 6-point rubric, where you can earn 1 point for original thesis, up to 4 points for the quality of evidence, and 1 point for your level of sophistication. Okay, so they graded on row one or row A, your thesis, row B, quality of evidence, and row C, your level of sophistication. Ask yourself again, are there any invisible power structures you can train yourself to look at from a passage or poem? Any of these isms that might be unique or interesting to you? Okay, we've also got this big iceberg picture just to remind you. You can see how a speaker of a poem or character in a passage interacts with these elements. But I really want you to try to infer, are there any invisible power structures, beliefs, or values that the speaker of the poem or the character shares that you could elucidate and illuminate for us? So, level one, this is when you first read a passage or poem. Okay, you scratch the surface. You're reading literally and superficially. This means we focus on what happens, like the plot, but we also focus on when it happens, the sequence of events, the chronology. It just is what it is, it's nothing more. And that's good for 6th and 7th grade English class, but this is AP Lit. We want to dig deeper. Okay, we're not just scratching the surface. Notice that these sort of strategies from just level one when you're reading, they focus on the action of a passage or poem, but not on the meaning of it. We need to get to the meaning. Also, when you're doing this level one, scratching the surface, we tend to focus on summarizing and identifying. Can I go back there? But we never explain. We read only scratching the surface, we're just going to lack depth. Okay, our evidence will just summarize the passage or the poem, and we might get 2 of those 4 quality of evidence points. It's something. It's better than nothing, but we really need to try a little bit harder to dig deeper. Okay, so for level 2, this is where we break ground as readers, and we tend to notice that there's more than meets the eye. We're not quite sure what the more is, but we know it's there. This means we may notice symbols or literary devices or techniques we use. We may not be able to see consistently how they work together to create meaning, but we see them there. We identify them. We don't know why they're there, but we've identified them. Okay, this is good. We want to do this. We don't quite see the full picture, but in level 2, we've broken ground to dig deeper. We can make out more details, see some connections and relationships. We might even spot some contradictions or complexities, but we don't know what they mean yet. Okay, maybe in the first 5-10 minutes you read the passage, you've broken ground. But we tend to focus our writings on the beginnings of analysis. We tend to shift between specific evidence with analysis and summary. This is what most students are comfortable doing, but we need to dig deeper. On these level 2 breaking ground, usually we lack depth and connectedness. It's good though. We might begin to ask why a symbol or a literary technique is used, but we don't quite connect it. Okay? And we also have difficulty developing a consistent line of reasoning. This consistent line of reasoning is like we trace each part throughout the essay logically. Okay, we're not jumping around to random parts. Each part tracked consistently. That's a specific point on the rubric that the College Board readers look at when they grade your essays. So, when we get to level 3, this is when we dig deeper. We see beyond the literal, beyond the symbolic and the metaphoric. We see the universal truth, the connection with humanity that can apply to anyone, anywhere, anytime. We can recognize archetypes, stereotypes, symbols, allusions, and think about how and why they function in the text. We focus on patterns as we read, and we might notice literary devices or techniques that are creating a unified meaning. Okay, maybe there's a character who is more of a Byronic hero. Maybe there's a character that's used as sort of a trickster archetype, like a fox, or maybe a character that's more of like a muskrat or a theatrical character. Oh, poor Yorick, a man of infinite jest. I knew him well. So in this level 3 reading, we notice shifts and contradictions and paradoxes, and we understand why and how they create meaning. We can break all the parts down, put them together, clearly understand how they function cohesively. We see the whole picture, and we understand those deeper relationships and ideas well beyond the superficial or literal meaning. It's hard to do this in the first 5-10 minutes of your essay, but by the last 10 minutes of the essay, you need to work yourself up to this level. Sometimes we can see how they create a new or unexpected meaning. We see how these techniques have been used by the poet or the author, but we provide our own original insight explaining not just how, but why the author or the poet has done this. We got to be original. We got to think of things that other people wouldn't necessarily think of, which means we got to take risks. Okay, we address what is done by the author, we address how it is done by the author, and we address how or why it creates meaning to establish our claims. It's good stuff. We want to explain our connections between ideas, and we want to consistently talk about our line of reasoning. Like in math class, you show your work. Show your work. What evidence did you use to arrive at this conclusion? Explain your line of reasoning. Show us your thought process. Don't just tell us your final conclusion. Show us how you arrived at your conclusion. Okay. Then for that quality of evidence, row B, you can get 3 or 4 points if you consistently do this, and every paragraph does this consistently. If it's really done well, you get that sophistication point, which is the hardest and most slippery point to grab onto. 1 point for sophistication, the level of complexity in your thought and your writing. So the grading rubric used, row A, row B, row C. Reminder, we're just reviewing this. I've gone over it before. Okay, check it, pause the video if you need to. So the bottom line to reading, it's never just what it is on the page. You're looking for the subtext. There is always another level of meaning in AP Lit. So you look for that level of meaning. You dive beneath the surface, you break ground, get out your shovels, your excavators, and get deeper into what possible symbols, irony, or literary techniques are being used. You look for the subtext, you look for the binary oppositions in power. Your timed writing is gonna be, for this in-class example, handwritten unless you're a bridge student. You're not expected to spend more than 40 minutes on it. Okay, I've gone over all these notes previously on other lessons. I'm just reviewing them with you here. Okay, the timed writing, remember, only 5 to 10 minutes brainstorming or outlining your main ideas. You want to give yourself 30 minutes to write out your full body paragraphs, but get to the point. You don't need a super long involved intro. An intro of 2 sentences is good enough. Then get into the body paragraphs. Okay, we need the protein, we need the meat, or the Morningstar substitute soy or protein powder that is in the middle of that essay. Okay, don't just have a bunch of empty carbohydrates there. I encourage 30 minutes, so you might break up your paragraphs like this, spending maybe 5 to 7 minutes per paragraph. Okay, if there's a timer, use that timer wisely. And you can't spend too much time reviewing or revising, but you might spend maybe 1 minute or less than 1 minute at the end crossing out words and picking a better word choice, especially in your thesis. Okay, maybe by the end of your essay, your thesis is evolved, so you scratch out a word and write another word above or below it. And it's not a bad idea to leave a few extra lines at the end of your first paragraph blank, so at the end of your essay, you could fill in that first paragraph even better if you left a few extra lines. Got it? 40 minutes. The College Board and Mr. Spencer, I want to see how you think. Okay, and for our practice in class, do not want you to go to SparkNotes or Schmoop or any other study guide websites. Okay, a timed writing means you don't have time to look for these other sources. You don't have time to space out or lose focus or go to Spotify and get a playlist. You don't have time. Okay, get your essay done. 40 minutes. You should include quotes from the text. This is a must. You're not losing points for misspelling. You're not losing points for not having a comma or an intro or conclusion that's only 1 or 2 sentences. Okay, if you're a bridge student, you can photograph a handwritten essay. Just make sure it's bright and I can see it. Can you see it? Make sure I can see it if you're a bridge student. Okay, in class, you're going to handwrite it and turn in a paper in class to me. Do not summarize the poem. Do not summarize the passage. Okay, for that free response question 1, remember, you're given a whole poem, so you can focus on diction and syntax there. Okay, that's different than when we did like an essay for Gatsby, for instance. Do not summarize the plot, the narrative of the poem, or the story itself in the passage. Do not just summarize the sequence of events that are occurring. AP Reader doesn't care. That's not analysis. Don't spend too much time on your intro. Don't summarize. Identify the traits of analysis. What are the verbs? You're making arguments. You're choosing new elements. You're examining and interpreting. You're discussing, adding commentary, not merely identifying. I spy with my little eye these literary elements. Not good enough. Explain how and why those literary elements are used and how they interact with each other. How does the tone influence the theme? How do these specific diction and syntax choices influence the tone? How does the use of irony influence the tone or the mood? Okay, there's my little iceberg example. So if you had a poem, you can look at the speaker's actions, their speech, or their thoughts that are described in the poem. But these are the more interesting things that might be lurking in the subtext. I love this image. Think about all that stuff underneath the surface that you can find. Final review. Okay, check these notes. I've gone over them several times in the last 2 semesters. In my last final suggestions, consider adding a title. If you have 30 seconds, maybe even a possible subtitle. It's not necessary, but it shows a hint of sophistication, and it's the first thing your reader's going to see. Your thesis should offer a rationale. So it'd be great to use a phrase like because or in order to. That shows you're giving a rationale. The author does this because he or she wants to do this, or the poet does this in order to emphasize this. Your thesis should be at the end of the intro. It should be arguable and debatable. It's possible that your thesis evolves over the course of the essay, and your true thesis is at the end of the essay because it is a timed writing and it's evolving as you write. That's understandable. But give a hint or a suggestion of your thesis claim, your hypothesis in the first paragraph. What are you trying to claim in your first paragraph? A thesis is your hypothesis. Do you get me? Consider saving space to revise or craft your thesis. Skip 2 or 3 lines maybe. And don't use words like seems, perhaps, or maybe. Just cross them out. If you accidentally write it, cross out these words. They're weak. They make your persuasiveness weaker. Okay, compare those examples, and I'll see you on the flippity flip side.